And as cases continue to skyrocket across the U.S. and schools decide whether to open this fall, President and CEO of Disaster Recovery Institute International, Chloe Demrovsky, joins us now from New York to discuss the risks associated with reopening and the best practices moving forward. Thank you so much for your time today, Chloe. First, tell us a little bit more about your organization and its mission.
Sure. Disaster Recovery Institute International is a nonprofit institute that trains and certifies continuity and resilience professionals who are the very people who are charged with planning for what organizations are supposed to do in the event of something like a pandemic.
Definitely. So we've been talking about this a lot all last week. We focused on reopening schools. We all know there is no way to reopen without risk. But the question is, what is the risk of not opening schools when it comes to children's development, community health, and of course, the economy?
It's a tough choice, and it's tough to find the right balance. And I think the key is that there's not going to be one unified approach federally or globally. It's really going to come down to state and local. And that's why so many public health decisions are made as close to the community where they're happening as possible. And any school that does reopen has to be prepared to have shutdown measures in place because, if a COVID outbreak is reported on their campus or one of their teachers or one of their kids, they're going to have to be prepared and have the measures in place to contact families and say, hey, we've had an incident. They have to have their messaging prepared and they have to reach out to them to be able to close for sometimes even the next day. And then plans for, when do they feel it's safe enough to trigger reopening again? So it's going to be a lot of stop and start, and that's going to be really challenging for families, for children, and for our country.
And what does it mean for our economy?
Well, we know that without schools, certainly it's certainly causing potentially detrimental harm to the future of our economy because this is where we train the next generation of leaders and citizens. But for currently, the parents who rely on schools to send their kids so that they can go out and work. Or even stay in their house and work productively. If you have a toddler and they're screaming and you're trying to be on a Zoom call, it doesn't work very well. So I think we're seeing a lot of the challenges that I think there have been a lot of underlying stresses with balancing parenting and family life with work life, and those are just completely strained by this pandemic.
So what are some of the guidelines suggested by the Disaster Recovery Institute on reopening during the pandemic?
So a lot of schools are taking a lot of different approaches, and I think that experimentation is going to be helpful. Every school has to comply with whatever their local public health authority is and the regulations that apply in their community and their state. I think that's really the first key measure. They have to be in touch with those public health authorities so that they're making sure that they're in alignment with whatever it is that the community is deciding to do. And then they have to be in touch with their community, with parents, to figure out what is safest. And above all, with teachers, because the teachers are the ones who are on the front lines with the kids. I know a lot of them are so anxious to get back in the schoolroom. It's certainly not the same thing to teach online, particularly with much younger children. I'm a university professor adjunct as well, and teaching on Zoom is a whole different experience. I'm grateful that I have it, but it does not replace the in-person experience. So as I said, you have to be in alignment with the local authorities. And then a lot of schools are doing different kinds of things, like they're staggering the days in which different cohorts of students will come to the campus. Mm-hmm. They're spacing out, putting them in different classrooms, trying to make sure at all times that there's that 6-foot bubble around each student and teacher, mask wearing, observing the hand washing. Students, younger kids maybe aren't as used to these guidelines and habits. They haven't built them up over time. So making it a collective activity to make sure that everyone is practicing, sanitary hand washing all the time becomes really, really important. And then we know that, there have been worrying studies that this is airborne. So schools that are poorly ventilated become a major issue. So if the HVAC systems are not ventilating properly, the best thing, of course, would be to keep students outside where possible. And we're going to have to get really creative about that. For a long time, we're about, learning in an enclosed classroom and keeping people focused there. But if we can get kids to be outside and learning outside as much as possible, that will greatly help to reduce transmission from what we know thus far. And I think the key thing also for everyone moving forward is that you you have to be flexible because we didn't know that this disease existed, at the beginning of the year. We're all learning as we go. And, epidemiologists, public health experts, they're doing their job as much as they can, but they're also learning a lot every single day. You mentioned the study from South Korea. That's
Right.
new data, but it could change next month. So you have to stay on top of that.
For sure. And I understand you've actually partnered already with some colleges and educational programs who are implementing some of your guidelines, correct?
Right. So what we do, we're the institute that keeps the best practice for business continuity for exactly what organizations are supposed to do in any kind of crisis. And so they're always feeding back to us, hey, this is what we're learning. This is what worked. This is maybe what didn't work. And this is how we can improve for the next time. So it's a credential like you would have for a doctor or a lawyer for those resilience experts who work at every major company and university. And they hold this credential. And then more importantly, they have to maintain continuing education so that they're up to date on the latest and greatest. And so we're always in touch with these various risk managers and continuity experts at universities all over the country as they're struggling with this huge challenge, schools and daycares as well.
Yeah, it is a huge challenge for sure. We'll have to wait and see what happens as the school year starts. Well, thank you, Chloe Demrovsky, the president and CEO of Disaster Recovery Institute International, for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you both.